I call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Northfield Public School Board. Today is Monday, November 28th, 2022, and the time is 6 p.m. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded. The recording of this meeting will be posted on the district website as soon as possible. Welcome to our community members here tonight to observe the important work being done on behalf of all school district stakeholders. Dr. Hillen, we have some items in the table file.
Yes, we just have a few items this evening. As an addendum to my superintendent operations and strategic plan update, I have a draft summary, a summary of a draft contract with LMR Media related to the potential sponsorship of district facilities and equipment. It was nothing that you're being asked to approve tonight. I'm just sharing with you the potential contract that we have. And then in addition, we have several appointments. We have one appointment actually, and several increase, decrease, or changes in assignment. That's it.
Thank you very much. If there are no objections, we will add these items to the agenda as we move forward. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Moved by Jeff, second by Amy. Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Anita, do we have any public comment? Okay, we will move past public comment portion of our meeting and on to announcements and recognitions. And tonight we will have the Minnesota Community Education Association board member Bob Lawrence. Is that right? Yep. Okay. Present the MCEA project award.
And Aaron's going to, I think, just give a little bit of an overview to begin with here.
Well, go ahead. Thank
I'll
you.
give a little more introduction of Bob. Good evening, board members. I'm happy to be here today and to introduce Bob Lawrence. Bob is the Director of Community Education for South Washington County Schools. He is also a board member of the Minnesota Community Education Association and the Region 5 rep, which represents the Northfield area. He is here to present a project award.
Well, there goes half of what I was going to say is who I am and where I'm from, but the exciting stuff is yet to come. So as Aaron said, I represent Region 5 on our state association for our community ed association. And one of the things as a board member for our association, we get to see and hear a lot of the exciting things happening throughout the state with community ed departments in schools and communities in different areas that make an impact in the communities where community ed programs are located. And so our project awards are presented at our annual conference, which was held in October, and they're presented to outstanding projects that have exemplified the concept of community education. A project is either a one-time event or ongoing activity that's associated with a community education program. So tonight I'm here to recognize the Northfield Community Education Center food shelf. As you may be aware of, the food shelf is located in the Northfield Public Schools Community Education building and is a partnership with Community Ed, the Community Action Center of Northfield, and as I learned tonight, Carleton College. One of the strong principles of community education is really that partnership, looking at what are those resources, who are the organizations and individuals within our communities doing good work and bringing those groups together to make a bigger impact. And this is definitely an example of a strong partnership. As we know, the main location is in the community ed office, and one of the things that was realized as the new office opened up is that there was a lack of resources on the north side of the community, and the need was identified that there was a need for food access in the north side. And so this was an opportunity to maximize use of resources and offer the food shelf services within and overlapping with Northfield public school offerings inside of that building. And so it really shows an opportunity for civic involvement, bringing in volunteers on a regular basis. As I mentioned, I learned about the Carleton College students who come in and help stock and distribute food, and able to serve the over 350 individual households who have visited the site. So in the first year, the impact was really significant, and that's something that we really were interested in, and one of the reasons why this project received this recognition is that they were able to distribute more than 63,000 pounds of food among 350 households over the course of nearly 2,000 visits. So tonight I'm here, as you know, to present this award to Michael Purcell, Anika Reichner, and Erica. I didn't get your last name, but if you join us as well, on behalf of the Community Association, thanks for the work that you do, and well deserved recognition. I don't know who It's the honor, so. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you and congratulations.
Yeah, I just think we should point out that one of the district's strategic commitments is to partnerships. And community education often is able to lead the way on that because of their unique positioning where they are able to connect with community resources. But if we think about all the people who are represented here tonight, coming together, using the space in our facility, a facility that we intended to be connected with the community in a variety of different ways, working with the Community Action Center, who does so many good things for families in our community, and involving Carleton College, just a great example of how when community partners come together, we can make a difference for real people. So this is living out our strategic commitment to both the stewardship, I would argue, and also to partnership. So thank you very much for stepping forward and being creative in your thinking.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you. Okay, do we have any other announcements, Dr. Hammond?
We do. Just give me one moment.
Mhm.
Navigated away from my announcements piece. Here we go. I just have one announcement related to community education as well. So the community education winter and spring brochure will be arriving in mailboxes later this week on or around December 2nd. And registration for all those programs are now open online. So it's open ahead of people getting the physical brochure in their mailbox. We encourage people to look through the brochure and see all the exciting new classes and old favorites. So when you look through that, you see that there's opportunities for everyone to engage in learning in some way, shape, or form, recreation, enrichment, or otherwise. So please make sure you take a look at the community ed brochure and take advantage of those excellent classes.
Very nice. Any other announcements or recognitions from board members? Okay, we are on to item 5, items for discussion and reports. First, we will hear student activities. Bubba Sullivan on his recommendation for the dissolution of the girls swim dive cooperative sponsorship with Randolph Independent School District 195. Welcome, Bubba.
Hi, thank you. So yes, you see a resolution probably in front of you about the dissolution of our girls swimming cooperative with Randolph. We are looking to do this for 2 main reasons. One, we did not have any Randolph swimmers this year, and apparently there are no Randolph girl swimmers in the pipeline, as it said, as of right now. And it will allow us the opportunity to possibly move down into Class A, which is where our boys swimming is Class A and our girls is AA. And so those are kind of the 2 main reasons why we're looking at the dissolution of this co-op.
Thank you.
And I would just like to add one of the things that Bubba has been working on since he became student activities director in July is reviewing all of the cooperatives that we have in place, because once a school district puts a cooperative into place, it stands until both of the school districts dissolve it together. So it is possible that as we look at these cooperatives, we could have cooperatives with other schools for particular sports where we have not had any participants from that other school district in quite some time. And in that case, when we're co-oping with other traditional public school districts, we count at least a portion of their enrollment. So for the benefit, for the competitive benefit of our athletes, we are certainly willing to work with our neighbors, right? In terms of if we have an athletic or activity that they could participate in where they just don't have the capacity to run that, we're happy to talk about that. But in the case where we haven't had student athletes from that district in quite some time, it behooves us for our student athletes and their competitive pursuits to be able to look at dissolving those. We are continuing to work. It's a little bit of a different ruling when it comes to charter schools. And so our partnerships with Arcadia are governed a little bit differently. The way that you cooperate, how you count the students is a little bit different. So we're reviewing those as well to try to make sure we have as much access for Arcadia students as reasonably possible as well. So we're not asking for a vote on this tonight, but we wanted to bring it forward to you. The girls swimming season obviously isn't until next fall, but we do want to make sure that we take care of this in an appropriately timely fashion so that the state high school league can place us in the proper class should that be where we belong.
And this is a year that the high school league is placing schools based on enrollment in their different classifications for the different sports.
And we've learned a lot. Bubba and I, we have spoken with the executive director of the state high school league a couple of times. And I think the most often thing we've heard in those meetings is, yes, and there's another rule, or there's another thing. So we are learning a lot about these cooperatives and some of the very nuanced rules that govern them.
Exactly.
Board members, do you have any questions or comments, Julie?
I appreciate the review of this, and I know that in some cases, co-ops have helped us, the alpine skiing where we added Red Wing, which did add some skiers to the mix where we needed some cases couldn't even field a full varsity squad. So in some cases it does benefit us, but I really appreciate the review of our co-ops programs.
Any other comments or questions? Amy?
I appreciate your forward thinking on this. I'm just curious, is there any reason that might come up in the next year that you would change your mind and not want to submit this application?
I think that's always possible, right? If there was some kids, I think that from Randolph that showed an interest in wanting to swim with us, I think what we would look at first is, depending on how the high school league comes out with our enrollment, let's say we are in AA, the highest class anyways, and this isn't going to move us, that might be a reason to say, yeah, we do that for sure. If it would move us up a competitive class, then I think that becomes a larger discussion about, right, do we want to, what's more important in that case, the opportunities or competitive opportunity for our own kids or offering kids from another community. And those are some things we've been dealing with and talking about this year is sort of, eventually setting a set of sort of parameters that what helps us decide when and when not to go up.
Thank you.
Anyone else comment or question? Okay, thank you so much, Baba.
Right, thank you.
Our next item, we will discuss Dr. Hillman's recommendation on the Northfield High School facility plan. An updated preliminary tax schedule and table prepared by Ellers is provided. Sal Bagley from Wool Architects and Engineers and Jeff Seeley from Ellers are here to help answer any board member questions. The board will be asked at the December 12th board meeting to provide administrators with the direction for the referendum structure and preliminary election timeline at the next board meeting. I do have some written comments that I'm going to make before I call on board members to ask their questions or make their comments. And the decision to take action on our high school facility, like so many decisions that have come before this board, is important and will have impact on our entire community. And we all appreciate that fact. Every board member at this table wants what is best for our students. We have all wrestled with the desire to be visionary and the need to be pragmatic. Several of you board members worked on the 2017 bond to build a new school. And we appreciate the work that you put into that. The Morris Letterman phone survey gave us important scientific data to base our decisions on, both in terms of the community's interest on updating the high school and financial capacity. Plus, we heard loud and clear how much our community values our districts, administrators, teachers, and staff. I want to again celebrate with all of you that we represent a community that trusts the district and is ready to invest in the high school. That is a trust we must work on together as a board to keep intact. We've each presented our individual perspective on how to invest in our high school, and now it's time to move into consensus for the sake of our students. We are in agreement on much along with our community. I believe the proposal before us is a demonstration of our board's commitment to students and our value for stewardship. Thank you, Dr. Hillman, for outlining clearly all the issues that this recommendation addresses, including HVAC and other systems needing maintenance that really should not wait until November 2024, though we all prefer to have a vote on an even year election. We would be gaining potentially more light and open spaces for students, updates to our career technical education spaces, as well as improvements to the auditorium, music spaces, classrooms, and special education areas. Dr. Hillman, you know the needs of the building, both the property and most importantly, the people. Board members, I will recognize you now, and on this initial round of comments and questions, I ask you to please keep to one question and a follow-up, or a couple of comments just as a matter of courtesy to fellow board members. Of course, I'll recognize you multiple times until we are completely through with this important recommendation. Welcome to Sal and Jeff, who will help answer any of your questions. Okay, board members, do you have any questions or comments? Okay, Amy?
I went on the tour today and I thought it might be nice if I just covered a few of the items that came out on the tour that I found helpful one way or the other when going through this. Could I take a minute to do that? Okay. So I was in there trying to understand the difference between the $60 million renovation approach and the $80 million multi-story academic building. So these are no particular order other than the order I wrote them down just now. So with the renovation, it would have no increase in the footprint at all. So there would be no additions added to any part, strictly with the renovation part. If the field house also passes, that would be something different. So with no additional increase in the footprint, that means with the renovation, there would be no storm shelter because it's nearly impossible to put the storm shelter in the currently existing building. If the field house was constructed and agreed to, then the field house would have the storm shelter in it, would be required to have it there. It's a little complicated to do it in a field house, but that's where it could go. For the renovation, there would be ways of adding additional light by cutting some windows into the hallways. So the light from the outside shines through the classrooms and then into the hallways. There would be ways of lifting up the ceiling of the cafeteria and the cafeteria area to make it a bit lighter or an airier. There would also be ways of sort of tearing out a few of the corner classrooms to allow sort of people to see around the corner and better traffic flow. With both versions, there could be updated furniture. With the $60 million renovation, basically you ask for the amount in the bond and then you figure out how much you can do and you prioritize what you want done, and that's what you get done. So that list of the high school facilities task force put together, there would be more prioritization. Not everything could happen. And so we'd have to figure out what would be more important. And there'd definitely be things with the theater and stuff that couldn't happen at all. A lot could happen with the theater, but not all of the requests, and same with the other areas. Then with the $80 million bond, it could actually go up in price a little bit because that initially was considered at $50 million for the academic multi-story addition, and then about $30 million for all the other renovations on the list, not counting the field house. So that with construction prices going up and inflation about 10%, the longer that we put off doing anything for either of these projects, the less we can accomplish with that same amount of money. So for the $60 million renovation, we'd be able to do less if we wait longer. With the multi-story addition, we would have to actually ask for more. So we might have to ask for 85 million instead of 80 million. So those are just sort of the things that I found interesting. And did you want to add anything? Did I miss anything critical there?
No, and I think, if people have specific questions about that, we can have Sal come up as well, but I think you covered what your questions were on the tour.
I was just trying to understand the differences between the two.
Do you have a question for Sal or Jeff, Amy? No. Okay. Oh, okay. Any other board members want to make a comment or have a question? Okay, Tom?
Ever the optimist and never wanting to give up. Yeah, if you have about 3 minutes. The 10-year facilities master plan was started in 2014. After 8 years, we're down to the last 2 weeks. So many in the community have been looking forward for years to finally replacing the embarrassment of a high school that we have. Sadly, we're on a trajectory to keep that thing alive at any cost. At its inception, There were 25 public meetings and 580 comments received through Thought Exchange. What the board heard then, some of whom are in this room now, was that the community did not want, and I quote, a Band-Aid approach. I quote again, did not want us putting significant money into a 52-year-old high school. If you want to hear those exact comments for yourself, spoken by Dr. Hillman discussing the 10-year facilities master plan, watch the 11/28/2016 school board video starting around the 1 hour, 52-minute, 40-second mark. Also check the 11/14/2016 video starting around the 1 hour, 24-minute, 30-second mark. He also said, and I quote, we may really need a high school building that matches the kind of curriculum we want to create lifelong learners. It was clear then, as it is now, that people do not want to remodel the high school yet again. If so much of the school is at the end of its life cycle, throwing money at it won't make it any younger. There is time to acknowledge it is time to start over, and this is that time. Recently, there have been a couple posts on Facebook regarding the potential plans for the high school. There have been hundreds of comments, and I encourage you to read them. They break down into two factions. One that doesn't want to do anything so as to not raise their taxes. The other that wants to build new. No one wants to build, no one wants to remodel, no one. As many point out in the comments, spending more money on this is throwing good money at bad, something contrary to our strategic plan commitment to financial stewardship. We have a rare opportunity to create a hybrid new school that allows us to start over for the 21st century with a new academic structure while leveraging the newest parts of the existing structure that can be improved with updating. This can be accomplished at substantially lower cost than starting all new, while giving essentially all the benefits of all new. It's an excellent win-win plan. I believe voters will support if given the chance. I understand what the desire and security of believing in the survey brings. I'm sure all those who believed in the red tide did too. The difference is the message and messenger. I firmly believe that doing Pathway 2 is absolutely the best choice financially, pedagogically, for mental health, as a statement of who we are as a school district and a community, but most importantly, as the best way to propel us forward to serve the generations of students to come in the future they create. Given the chance, I believe the community will support this for those reasons too. Buildings matter, and believe it or not, kids matter too. I've hoped against hope that we would be forward thinking and put in motion a vision and a plan to carry thousands of kids and their families forward into the 21st century, detached from and devoid of the shackles of the past. Thanks.
Okay. Any other comment or questions? Julie?
So I appreciate all the comments everyone has made, and particularly Claudia, how you began and really sort of refocused us on where we need to frame discussion, and particularly how Dr. Hillman has really aided us in helping us look at what is before us. And I have made these comments, so I think that it's understood that I do believe in renovating a structurally sound building. I do believe in the power of renovation and the ability to reimagine spaces in ways that are really unimaginable for the most part for us now, but having great confidence in Wold and what they would be able to do. I think that as a board, we really need to fully recognize the results of the survey. It was a professional and stratified survey that I think we have to fully appreciate the results. And I appreciate the way Claudia has framed our need to really look at our community saying, yes, they recognize that the high school, some work has to be done to the high school, and they're willing to support that. I think they seem to understand that we need some new spaces for our students to thrive and our teachers to be supported, our staff to be supported. And I think that we are obviously at a inflection point in the history of the high school, but I do believe that if we move forward based on Dr. Hillman's recommendation with the 3-question a potential for 3-question bond referendum. What I think we've heard from the community is that it would be supported. I do believe, and I agree that with Claudia, that the deferred maintenance at the high school really needs to happen. And if we are in a situation where we were to ask the community for more than what they have told us they are willing to support, we'd be in a situation of having to do deferred maintenance and not really having a path forward at that point. So to me, the best path forward, and ultimately, I think a facility that this community will be proud of and that will serve our students, and particularly with the addition, hopefully, of the support of a athletic facility that we would be serving our community and our students and our staff well. So understand that we all wish that there was the opportunity to maybe move ahead with a new school, but I am really confident and quite comfortable that if we move forward with a renovation again, that will reimagine and be a very powerful transformation of a lot of key spaces in the high school, that our community will be well served. And we are really paying attention to our stewardship and what our community has said they are willing to support.
Thank you, Julie. Any other comments or questions?
I do have just a couple things I want to point out in the, so as people have recapped the 3 questions that I have recommended to you. First question being remodeling, second question of the high school building at $60 million. Question 2, contingent on passing. Question 1, athletic facility field house for 17 million. And third, really some updates to outdoor fields in terms of artificial turf, not talking specifically Memorial Field, but fields adjacent to Memorial Field to gain access to them. The one piece that's not specifically right now in those questions that we need to make sure that we might come back to you with is the question of the ice arena. So I know that no one's talked about it yet. We are still working very hard on public-private partnerships so that we don't have to be in that circumstance. But I just don't want to have this discussion. We've talked so much about the ice arena as part of it. I just want to make sure that you know that it's not in the recommendation right now. It's that we still have some data to try to figure out what is the best pathway forward. And then I think the board just, continues to need to think about a number of ways that time changes. And I do want to point out at the last board meeting, people asked for an updated tax schedule because we know that the financial markets have been very volatile in the last 6 months. And we were reminded of that again just in the last few weeks. And so, Jeff Seeley is here to answer any questions from Ellers. When I talked with you just a few weeks ago, when we looked at that survey data of what $135 on a $300,000 house, if you back map that over a 25-year bond, theoretically, the tax capacity there was around a $77 million bond proposal. In just the last couple of weeks, the way the markets have changed, when Jeff ran the new schedule, if you looked at the schedule and you did the math like I did, that $77 million just a couple of weeks later is now slated to potentially be a tax increase of $148 as opposed to $135. Not out of the realm of what the survey said, a little bit above that part, but I want to share with you that just that is how the market is changing just a little bit. And we heard that from both Sal and from Jeff as we prepared for this meeting about how things are changing so quickly. So I just want to be upfront if people didn't have a chance to really look at that detailed tax schedule. If you looked at it and said a couple of weeks ago, Matt, you said, $77 million, $135 a year on a $300,000 house. Now it's $148. Jeff and I were talking just before the meeting. Another month, it might be less, might be more. We don't know that. Just there's some change in the market right now. So I just want people to make sure that you're aware of that as part of the recommendation as well. And then I think just the timing part again is something else that I want to make sure board members, think through. When you give me direction, at the next meeting, you're not, it's not definitive, right? But you're telling us to prepare. So just to think about it, if the earliest you wanted to consider something, would be in May, we really need to have you take action, the board take action, formal action with the ballot questions and whatnot in February. So that's just how quickly after the beginning of the year, those timelines come along. So I don't see August as being an option, but November of 23 could also be an option. But I'd also like Sal Bagley just to briefly talk about what she thinks would be the difference in waiting, just so you have all of the information. I want to also be super clear that regardless of what timeline you do, unless we go in 24, which unfortunately I just don't think we can wait that long to address some of these specific issues. It will be a special election technically, right? That's the technical term for when you're even in a general election, this would actually be called a special election because it's a specific, question to the voters. So one thing I just want to assure people of, regardless of what time frame you pick, people in this room know me, and we will do everything humanly possible to make sure everyone knows, when it would be on the ballot. So I just know anytime we talk about something other than November, people rightfully get a little concerned, and I understand that. But regardless of when you ask us to take this forward, I can look you in the eye and say, there is no doubt in my mind, we will make sure that there was a lot on the ballot in this November, and people told me they were sick of hearing me talk about the capital projects levy, right? So imagine what we can do when there's nothing else on the ballot, right? So I'm very confident that, we can make sure that people know if that is what is the will of the board, I would do whatever it takes to make sure that every voter in the district knows about it and has plenty of information to make the decision. But I do something Sal told me earlier this afternoon as we prepared was really striking to me about the difference in a 6-month window of what we're seeing with construction inflation. So Sal, I've given you a little time.
Sure, and Amy mentioned a little bit already, but the construction market has been experiencing pretty high inflation. About 3% per quarter is what we've been seeing for about the past 18 months. And so a 6-month decision, I actually looked at it for you all. If you were to go in May versus November, I think could approach a $4 million difference with the scale of project you're talking about, because we'd want to recommend 2 quarters worth of inflation. So obviously the right time is the right time, and only you all can pick that, but I just want to make sure you understood kind of the impacts of your choices. I just talked to Knutson Construction earlier today, and they would recommend for a year, somewhere between 10 and 14%, depending on the region. And so for 6 months, we're in that kind of 5 to 6% inflationary difference. So just want to make sure you had the latest and greatest information. And unfortunately, kind of whatever timeline you pick, we will have to recommend an inflationary increase from the numbers you were considering, right? So May is one change, and November would be another. So.
Thank you, Sal.
Yes.
Does anyone have any questions or comments for Sal? Oh, Julie.
I just want to thank Sal for all the work she's done on this and really presented us with all of the information we needed and helping us, to really, reimagine what the high school could be from a renovation standpoint, and then the potential of, when a new wing sort of surfaced. Can you just talk about, with your wealth of experience, you were able to show us some of the renovated spaces, but where maybe the market's sitting now on renovation versus all new, and what are some where that approach has been taken and been successful? Just sort of impart some of your wisdom on that to us, because we always learn every time we were able to glean from your knowledge and experience.
Oh, thank you. I would say that probably 70% of the schoolwork in Minnesota is renovations versus new construction. And that's for a couple of different reasons. Certainly you have districts that are built out, and, going anywhere else is not really an option, maybe not in a place of growth. So building new square footage isn't the right choice for them. And then also finances, right? What can you afford to do and what funding sources are available to you? So obviously with renovations, LTFM is a funding source that many districts would choose to leverage to try to help kind of offset the impact to their taxpayers. And then I also have a few clients who have the perspective that the most sustainable building is the one that we have, right? And kind of maintaining what we have. That being said, anytime you run the numbers, and you all have every which way, when you're kind of at that magic threshold of should we reinvest or should we replace, it oftentimes, I think, comes down to the emotion and the politics, right? The numbers say one thing, and then what the community believes and what you all ultimately decide is another. So I think you're really right on that threshold, and I can appreciate the difficult decision you're at. New high schools are not an everyday project, right? And some communities take many, many, many times requesting it to try to get that to pass. And some ultimately land on a different solution because of the emotional attachment to the high school, whether that's the location or the facility itself. So I personally see more renovation at the high school level than new facilities. Yeah, that's what how I'd answer. Sometimes very significant renovations like the replacement of the academic wing of the building. That's not an uncommon project, although less qualifying for other funding sources.
Thank you.
First, thank you for my personal tour.
You're
today.
welcome.
Then I have a question. I know a lot of people in town know about the new high school in Owatonna.
Mhm.
And you told me earlier that Wold is designing that.
Correct.
And I'm just wondering, I don't know much about the new high school in Owatonna. I just know it's kind of like, Owatonna and Northfield, So if you could tell me what I should know about the Owatonna High School when people start trying to compare Northfield to Owatonna.
Sure. So Owatonna is going to be a new facility for 1,600 students, so for slightly more students than you. It is going to be about 316,000 square feet. In some areas, it will be 3 stories tall. Most of the building will be 2 stories tall. It will have 4 gym courts, so actually is similar to the field house proposal you're considering. The design of the building is really meant to support their career pathways programming. And so there's some kind of feature spaces to support that programming. It is on a site just off of Highway 14, just north of it. So if you're driving on Highway 14, you can see it clear as day now. It's quite a tall structure. It will open in next fall. So it will open in fall of 2023. It will have been under construction for slightly longer than 2 years. Took about a year to design and now 2 years to build. And I would say it bid at the bottom of the construction market, which means that they got a screaming deal on it. And I'm happy for them. And they also got a very significant quantity of corporate donations, right? So they had Federated Insurance donate $20 million in cash, and then they also donated the land, which was, I believe, valued at around $2 million. And then they had Viracon, who was in town, donate glass at cost for the project. And they had Wenger Corporation do donations in kind of somewhere around $2 million, I think, as well. So the total cost of their project was really offset of what was asked of the taxpayers. So I believe the taxpayer ask was, trying to remember what it was, 110. But the project is higher than that by about $20 million. Thank you for reminding me. And then they had a second question that requested for funds to convert the existing high school into a district office. And that was also approved. So question 1 had funds to demolish the existing high school, and question 2 actually took that money and added to it to renovate it. So they will actually maintain parts of the existing high school as other district facilities. Trying to think what else. It's a pretty large campus. It's more than 90 acres. So they have a pretty large site. So plenty of parking, and most of their fields will be on the high school site. There's a couple of fields they chose to leave in their current place, like varsity baseball. If you have any other questions, I could talk for a while, but.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Tom, did you have a question?
Yeah, for Sal.
Yes.
How long will the renovated school last here?
You mean in terms of the age of the facility, like how long you can expect to?
Yeah, how many more years can we get out of it?
So structurally, I wouldn't have any concern. Structures can last well over 100 years as long as they aren't exposed to the elements, and that's not a problem you have. Mechanical systems, and Cole, I'm going to look at you a little bit. I think depending on the system you put in can kind of range from 25 to, with great maintenance, 50 years. And I would say that's true of if you replace the units you have or with a new. Finishes are probably more like 15 to 20 years. So carpet and casework, things of that nature. But I would expect, whether you built a new building or you did the path B or pathway 2 or a renovation, the mechanical systems you'd want to start planning for the replacement in 25 to 30 years, kind of regardless of that path.
So the community could potentially have this renovated building for another 50 years?
I would say so, yes. Yep.
Thank you. Okay, Julie?
I wanted to just ask Jeff if he could comment a little bit on the analysis of tax impact. And I was wondering, I'll give you a chance to get to the podium. We appreciate the work that you've done, and Val, for all your work that the board says, oh, what about? And we know that requires several calls and a lot of extra work. So really appreciate that. So if, and based on the time frame of a bond referendum, when do the bonds actually have to be sold, correct? And then when you did this latest draft for us, was there an impact with our AA plus bond rating? Did you see? So maybe just kind of talk through that. Certainly you have no crystal ball. So you saw the interest rate go up 1 full percentage point since the last time, I think, when you had run it. So just kind of talk through the market and what sort of factors are at play, and then what action we would take as a result of, when we would have to go out for bond sales.
Okay.
Based on what we would hope would be a positive bond referendum vote.
All right. Well, let's take a look at the market to start with. So if we take a look at interest rates, this last year has been extremely volatile. Rates have increased significantly. Now, historically, they're still in the lower third of what we've seen over the last 40, 50 years, right? So even at, 5.5%, most of us probably remember the 10, 11, 12% rates. So historically, they're still fairly low. But if you go back a year from now, they have gone up considerably. So if you look at just the Fed rate, the Fed's met, I think it was 5 times. They're meeting again in December. They've raised just in 2022, the interest rate, the federal interest rate, 3.75%, from 0 to 3.75. Now, that does not directly change a municipal bonds rate. However, it's a competing investment for investors. So you'll see the municipal bond rate mirror what's happening with those investments. So we have seen that. We have seen a little less than 3.75% increase. So in particular on the short term, on the long term, we've probably seen, 2.5% increase on the longer maturities. So the shorter maturities are going to price high or have a higher interest rate than what you've seen. The longer ones are going to be higher, but not quite as high. Now, we do anticipate the Feds making some changes again in December. Now, some of that is already anticipated and built into the rates, which is why we changed the rates when we looked at this. So there is a cushion in the 5.5%. If we sold this today, you might be closer to 5%. Okay. But we anticipate there's going to be some upward pressure on rates. The other thing to keep in mind is, supply and demand is going to have a significant impact on your rate. So if the supply is low, then you're going to get a better rate. Now, what we don't know right now, supply is low. That's why we're seeing municipal bond rates lower than the federal rate. That could change at any point. I mean, there could be a lot of supply entering the market, maybe in the spring of next year. That's going to drive rates up. So we don't know what that's going to be, but that's going to have an effect on your rates. So historically, we're still low, but we're quite a bit higher than what we were even a year ago. Significantly higher than a year ago. So as far as timing of it, you have some options as far as timing. So if you did a May election, you're probably looking at selling the bonds in July or August and closing, late August, maybe somewhere in August or September. But you don't have to sell them that quick. Basically, whenever the construction starts and the invoices start coming in is when you need the money. Okay, so you might get invoices. There's two different types of invoices you might get for the project. One is engineering, design, architectural surveys, those types of things, soil land survey. Those you can actually finance from your general fund and wait for the bond proceeds and then reimburse the general fund. So you can cash flow them. So and you don't need any special type of resolution or anything. The material costs, the supply costs, the construction costs, you'll want the money available before you start getting those invoices. Now, you may want it available before you get the preliminary engineering and architectural costs or fees also. You may not want to cash flow it, but my point is you could hold off on it. Now, what would be the advantage of holding off would be, first of all, you'd have fewer months to accrue interest. So it'd be a shorter, I mean, you might knock out 6 months of accrued interest by waiting. That sounds nice. However, you have 6 months worth of interest rate that those rates could go up. Now, they could stabilize and could come down a little bit, but you can't predict that. So you're running the risk that by waiting maybe 6 months until you actually need the money, it could very well offset with a higher interest rate, whatever you save on accrued interest. The other thing is, the good news about increasing rates is investment rates are going up. So when we were selling bonds at that very low interest rate, you might have been paying, 2.5%, but you were earning almost zero. Right now, because of the interest rate market, you should be able to earn a significant amount of interest relative to what you're paying on the bond. I mean, you aren't going to earn 8-10% interest, but relative to what you're paying on the bond, there's a much smaller gap. So if you sell early, then you also have that money to invest and you'll earn more interest also. So given that, right now, we believe the wiser choice would be to sell it closer to the election or shortly after election, as opposed to waiting till you actually need to start funding what they call the hard costs of the project.
And then if you just comment about how our AA plus
Oh,
bond rating would
yes.
have impacted.
Absolutely.
Will impact the bond sales or the interest.
Yeah, so you're going to see probably 5 basis points or 0.05 of a percentage point for every bond rating category. So there's, yeah, of course, there's the AAA, but then you have the 3 AA ratings, the 3 single A ratings. So if you guys are at the high end of the AA, if you were the high end of a single A, that's at least 3 bond ratings. You're looking at about 0.15%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you carry it over 25 years on $80 million, it's going to add up significantly. So, and the other thing we're seeing is the spread is actually growing with these with the new interest rate market. So by the time you sell this, you might be seeing 0.8% between each rating instead of 0.5, or I'm sorry, 0.05 of base percentage point between. So it's spreading right now. So as time moves on, your rating is going to be even more material in what you're saving.
Thank you. Can I ask one other question? So what factors play into, you have been so such an incredible partner with us in terms of recommending and us proceeding with refinancing. So is there state statute or other things that preclude us from renegotiating the bond or the resale of the bond at a lower interest rate, or
Yes.
or what are the parameters and when would we potentially be at those parameters if the market were to change shortly, we're at some time frame after we had made the initial bond sale?
Okay, so whenever you sell a bond, you decide whether it's callable or refundable. or not, and most of your bonds are. Typically, that's about 8 or 9 years from the issuance of that bond. Now, so you can wait till that call date, which is 8 or 9 years from the issuance of that bond, and then you compare it to current market conditions or rates, and you determine what the level of savings are, and then you can move ahead with it. You can refund it prior to that call date, but you don't get the advantage of tax exempt rates. You have to pay taxable rates, which are higher. And there's a law that says you have to save at least 3% present value. And right now, most of your bonds were issued in a low interest rate environment. And some of them, as we looked at them, they had potential for savings, and this goes with every school. It's not just your school. But with rates jumping in the last year like they have, it pretty much shut down all the refunding savings. We had, at the beginning of the year, I bet you we had 10, 12 of them that looked really promising. And by the time we got to the later in the year where the call dates were, the savings weren't there, and we didn't even do them.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Other board members want to have, or have another question or a comment? Okay, thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, board members, and thank you to Sal and Jeff, and especially Dr. Hillman for your work on this recommendation. Next, we have the policy committee recommendations, and Dr. Hillman will present on the policy committee's recommendations to policies 603, 652.1, 652, and updates to the procedures for policy 652.1.
Yeah, so I'll take 603 first. So first of all, I want to thank the board for allowing MSBA recommended changes due to statute to be included in the consent agenda. In our first couple of meetings since we've been able to do that as part of the policy committee, we have been very productive. As you know, we just have continued to try to go through policy, starting way back with the 100s, and we just continue moving forward. So we're entering the 600s, and the first couple of it are coming up around curriculum. So 603 and 651 are a little bit together here. 603 is really around the establishment of the required district advisory committee. Think of the world's best workforce report that we do. This is what really establishes that district advisory committee. It also talks about things like we've made updates to this in the past couple of years to align this statute with the dyslexia legislation that happened a few years ago. So fairly reasonable updates to 603. But one of the key things is in sunsetting 652, the reason that we're doing that is that we do have a couple of different pathways of policy. So in around 2004, we saw a number of policies that MSBA might not have as part of their standard policy portfolio come into the district to govern areas that had impacted other districts in the past. 652, excuse me, I'm sorry, 651, thank you. 651 is going to be really integrated into 603 because 651 really identified who should be on the district advisory committee. So it was duplicative in nature. So we are folding the pieces of 651 into 603, just trying to remove redundancy. 652 gives our instructional services department and the district guidelines and approaches to selecting instructional materials. Very few changes. Again, this is a policy that we have had in place since 2004. So we've had it for nearly 20 years. We did adjust it so that it is in the same format now as the rest of our policies. It's part of our style guide update. And again, really what we did is just some basic updates. So this policy, this is why we want every policy on a reasonable cycle, because we were still defining instructional materials to include microfilm. And I'm not sure if does anybody even remember microfilm, but obviously we aren't using microfilm anymore. So we just did a little bit of updating to be more inclusive of things like music, video, and audio recording. So really just modernizing some of that language. And then making sure that when this was adopted, we are at the beginning of kind of the state standards movement, really updating those in the early 2000s. And so we've under 4A, We're just saying core and supplementary materials which support and are consistent with the district's curriculum, as well as a varied interests, abilities, and maturity levels of the students, and align with state standards. Things that we purchase, right, should align with state standards. So those are the modest changes that we have in 652. 652.1 is another policy that we have had since 2004. Actually, I'm sorry, 2008. And the policy itself is fairly straightforward, right? It's a minimalistic policy, but this policy is one of the very few that we have in the policy manual that requires the board to also approve procedures. Typically, administration is charged with designing and implementing procedures. This one is a policy that requires the board to also approve the procedure. So you'll see we've just done a little wordsmithing in 652.1, really just talking about district, just taking a few words out, just saying district residents who have concerns about specific instructional programs may request the opportunity for review. Really just taking a longer sentence and just making it more direct. Really, the 652.1 part, the meat of that is in the procedures, what was also in your packet. And again, this is a case where you'll see that there are fairly modest changes to the procedures. What this does is it simply combines, or make sure that we have updated people in the list of people who would be on a committee that would review any concerns brought forward about any materials. This particular one, was originally 7 members. We're recommending that it go to 9 members to include special education parents as a specific stakeholder group as part of it. But you can see the list of people who are there, who appoints them. Again, there are very limited changes to this set of procedures, more updating than anything. And then modernizing, giving a link to the request form for reevaluation of instructional materials. And it was really good to review this. We, we've not had used this in some time, but it does point out that we will in July of each year at the July board meeting, assign the people to this committee so that should there be any requests that are brought forward during the year, the committee is already sitting. So again, these are policies that were next up in the list of policies that we've been reviewing. I would say it's really more updating than substantive changes to policies that have been in place since 2004 or 2008. So no action on these tonight. They will be asked to be approved at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Very thorough. Any questions? Julie, you have a question?
I have a question on the last one you just reviewed, which was 652.1, where we are stating review of materials questioned by a district resident or employee. So if there is a parent of an open enrolled student, how would we address their concerns? Or
We'll bring that one back to the policy committee.
Okay.
Okay. Oh,
Sorry,
yeah.
I was at the policy committee meeting and we asked that very same question. And the thought was that part of open enrolling into the district is making a decision about the policies. I mean, that's part of your decision when you choose the district that you come to. So we felt that that if they're open enrolling, that's great. We'd love to have them, but they can always open enroll somewhere else or go back to their home district.
okay, I agree with that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for
Anyone else?
reminding me of that, Amy.
Okay, this will be an item for action at the next board meeting. And now we will hear from Dr. Hillman on the operations and strategic plan update.
Yes, and so I've got a couple of things to highlight. I did have one thing in the table file that I'll add to this report. The first thing I wanted to share around a leadership tactic and employee engagement tactic that we use called leader rounding. And this is another one of the methods that we use to engage our employees and to make sure that we're getting qualitative data as long as quantitative data. And so rounding essentially is where we have our administrative team, we endeavor to meet with as many employees who will meet with us within a window. So we have around a 3-week window. It's not a hard and fast one, but around a 3-week window where administrators in the system are seeking to have a one-on-one conversation, 10 to 15 minutes, with as many employees in the system as we can. Now, I want you to think about how many administrators we have and think about how many employees we have, right? And our administrators did at least 360 rounding sessions with staff this fall. So it's a very personal connection. You can see in my report, we ask a core set of 4 questions. What's going well? What's one thing you think we could be doing better, or what could we do to improve? Administrators might ask this in different ways. They have the capacity, as long as they're within the frame of the question, to be able to phrase it just a little bit differently. Are you feeling supported, right? Do you have the support that you need? We will often also ask, in addition to these questions, do you have all the resources that you need? Do you have all the things you need to do your job well? And then we also specifically ask people, who could we recognize on behalf of them for their good work? And something we know about employee culture, employer and workplace culture, is that when we provide specific feedback about how your work impacted a colleague, we know that that's very meaningful. And we use a term that we say, what gets recognized gets repeated. So if we are recognizing people for not just, hey, way to go, but something very specific. So for example, when you helped this colleague with this unit plan, this allowed them to deliver the lesson in a much more effective way, and they really appreciated your expertise on it. That kind of specificity is just important in the workplace, and it really is rocket fuel for our culture. I just want you to do the math on 10 or 15 minutes times 360 employees and think about how much time that takes our administrative team and how much time it takes from the employees themselves. So we have to make sure that we do something with that data, right? We don't collect data and don't do something with it. So each administrator is required to submit a very simple report we call a 3-2-1 report for their building or department. It includes the top, we ask them to do 3 things. What were the top 3 themes of the things you heard were going well in your rounding window? The second part is, what were the 2 most often identified areas for improvement? And then the final one is, what is one leader action that you are going to take to be able to address that particular concern, right? It might be forming a small subgroup. It might be simply making sure, people have something that they specifically need. But what are you going to do as a leader to address those areas for improvement? How are you going to report back to them, right? How you're doing on that. And so each leader in their department and or their building does this. And then in early November, all of our administrators got together and we did a cross-building and cross-department analysis of all of these themes from across the district. And I've listed just a few things that we found were going well. The biggest themes that we had were mostly of what was going well, that really we summarized it as that you can't say this enough, right? Good process leads to success. A lot of comments were around when there was an established and a quality process that met the needs of employees. Now I'm summarizing, those could have been different at Spring Creek Elementary versus at Bridgewater versus the high school. But that was the theme, that when we have to commit to good process, because good process almost always equals success. Things like making sure that people really feel connected this fall, more so than they have in some time. And the number of comments about strong relationships with students or with each other or with families were really prevalent. People did say they had the resources they need, right? We asked that question explicitly, and without question, while there might be a few things here and there across the system, people said they had what they need. People really appreciate when communication is clear, ongoing, timely, and predictable, right? If it's predictable, I know that this is going to come from Matt, or I know this is going to come from my building administrator. Those are some of the keys to success. Instructionally, we heard a tremendous amount of positive feedback about the letters training, as you've heard before a number of times. We also heard from staff members how pleased they were to know that their feedback from last year about PLCs was received and heard. Last year during rounding, we heard there was a lot about concerns about the way we were structuring the overall arc of PLCs last year, which included more training than it had in the past. And we restructured the PLCs based on that feedback to address that concern. And there was a lot of recognition that that was a positive thing. And then I would sum it up on, interestingly, and this is probably our 3rd or 4th year of using rounding. Early on, we had some very clear themes across the system about things that we needed to improve as a system. And there's still quite a few things for us to improve, but they tend to be more specific and related to a specific building. So that's a good thing. And so I sum that up as that today's problems are caused by yesterday's solutions, which is one of my favorite quotes from an operations consultant, Peter Senge, just about that there are things that we will have fixed based on some feedback that now have created new problems that now we are trying to respond and address to. So rounding is a very, very powerful tool, and we're just very pleased to be able to do it. I'm including some information here about the screening report that we had from the social skills improvement system. And so in early October, students in grades 3 through 12 self-reported feelings and behaviors associated with social emotional skills and externally and internalizing behaviors through a screening survey. So this is the first time that we have asked students themselves. It was not required. It was, people could opt out. But it was something that people were able to give us, students were able to give us their firsthand perspective. And so what we found is that while we know we have a number of concerns about mental health and youth, both here and across the country, there was some really heartening things from this SEL screener, specifically looking around, knowing that we have a normative set of data from across the country, and that when we look at 3rd through 12th graders, 86% of them reported well-developed social emotional skills. And in the packet, I give you a list of a few bullets. You'll see that we're just slightly before the normative goal about students reporting no externalizing concern. So if I have a social emotional concern, do I externalize those behaviors? And it's showing that we are at that point just a little bit below the normative goal for externalizing. But again, doable, workable. It's data that is workable, and something similar on the internalizing, a little more concern on the internalizing. We had 80% of our 3rd through 12th graders reporting no internalizing concerns. That's compared to what the normative goal of 85% is. So a little bit below that, but it really does give us some insight to how our students are feeling and what are the kinds of strategies that we can use to continue to assist them in their social emotional development. I just do want to point out that we were using a tool from a national vendor, and there was one part of one document that inadvertently said and incorrectly stated that it was aligned to state social emotional learning standards. This was a document that was intended for people across the country. And in Minnesota, our state legislature has not adopted explicit state social emotional learning standards. Instead, they have implementation guidance. So we shared that with parents just to make that change, and so that people knew that there was we should have updated that particular item in the letter that was part of the information that went to parents, and we just missed it. So that has been corrected and shared with parents. Second to last thing is short cycle goals. This is something that we were well on track for before we got to the pandemic. Then we were disrupted for a period of time. The concept here is there is no, I like an athletic approach here, that there is no coach, right, that says, well, this is our plan for the season, and we'll wait till the end of the season and not make any changes or take any data to see how we're doing around that. Even in just a single contest at a halftime of an athletic event, coaches will review what's happening, how they're doing. They'll make adjustments for the second half. School goals often were semester or yearly based. And so you would set the goal, people would do honest and very good work, but not necessarily return to the results. I gave you an example from our elementary 2022-23 school improvement plan update. So you heard this elementary school improvement plan earlier this year, and you're seeing that we are completing those school improvement plans with quarterly progress. So you'll see our goal for 2022-23 in that case, 80% of students will meet grade level benchmarks for fluency. And in the progress there, you see how we are doing toward that goal. And we're hearing from a lot of PLCs some real excitement around being able to measure those goals on a quarterly basis. Some goals are easier to measure on a quarter basis than others, right? Some might be actually better done 3 times a year as opposed to 4. But our goal is to make sure that this analysis, and this is part of the reboot, the reset of PLCs, is so that PLCs have the opportunity to be looking at that data to be able to adjust whatever changes that they might need to make, or affirm that what they're doing is working. And so we built in some intentional reflection times. And I think this is very exciting, for our staff and ultimately for our students, because it's something that we are dipsticking every so often to make sure that we're on the right track. And if we see that we're not making as much progress as we had hoped, we don't whine about it. We don't complain. We just say, okay, what else can we do to try? Maybe we just haven't had enough time yet, with this particular approach. Maybe there's some other piece of data that we say, hey, we're about there for a breakthrough. We need to keep going. In some other circumstances, we might say, hey, this approach was great for the first quarter, but didn't get what we needed. How do we adjust to make sure that we get back on track toward hitting that annual goal? So as you can probably tell from the inflection of my voice, this is outstanding, because this is where real continuous improvement happens. Final part of my report, which was in the table file, I chose to put this in my report as opposed to items for information. As you're aware, a couple of years ago, we adopted a policy 809.1. I'm just going to make sure I get the date right here. In 2020, we adopted this. And this policy was around sponsorship of school district owned property. We had discussions about the fact that we could open up some additional revenue streams by allowing local businesses and other organizations to basically do paid sponsorship of certain items, right? You see this in colleges all the time, et cetera. We were disrupted by the pandemic. We weren't able to implement that. Through our partnership with LMR Media, and now LMR Media is also a partner with KYMN Radio. They are responsible for Northfield Live that I've talked with you before about bringing dozens, if not scores, of athletic and other events, including, I think that they have helped us with graduation last year, and they've done some other really great things, some concerts. LMR Media is willing to enter into a contract with us where they would essentially do the marketing and the sales of the potential sponsorship of particular parts in the district. So I'm going to give you one example, and I'm just going to be straightforward. We do not have the human power to do this on our own. We don't have a marketing department. We don't, as you know, our administration is pretty lean. So I'm going to give you an example. Lance Reister, who is the owner of LMR Marketing, is taking a look at the swimming scoreboard. He believes that there is room and a way to do 10 sponsorships on the swimming scoreboard. Bubba doesn't have time to do that. I don't have time to do that. I mean, I would do so if the board directed me to. Val doesn't have time to do that. And so looking at contracting with someone like an LMR, the draft contract that we included in the table file, basically Lance would get 15% of whatever he were to sell. So it's a piece where we could open up a revenue stream. This community partner makes some money off of their work for us. And so we're exploring it. The swimming example is one. Now, we just talked today that there could potentially be an entirely new and much more inviting approach with some digital signage and some things specifically during athletic events, not, during the school day, but during athletic events and things like that. So that's the example. We are consistently looking for non-taxpayer funded revenue streams, right? And this is one that we have a policy that would allow us to do. We're finally able to start to get into this kind of work again. So I'll be bringing that contract back to you in December for approval. There could be it's a draft, so there could be some minor modifications, but we're pretty excited about that opportunity. This is an example of our stewardship, strategic commitment, and our partnership strategic commitment, because we just don't have the tools nor the expertise to do this. I don't know what to charge for a swimming scoreboard. I just don't know. It's not part of my training, but Lance knows what to look at. And so I think this is an exciting opportunity to work with a business within the community. The draft contract that you have in the table file does not have an ending date. What I would recommend is we try it for this year, see how it goes, and then, make any other adjustments as we move ahead. So that is just the final part of the operations update this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, are there any comments or questions? Okay, Amy.
Thank you for the report. I have two questions. One's just a silly one. On the learner outcomes graph that you had with the quarterly progress, on grade 2, there's ENW and ORF. What are they?
Yeah, so those are two parts of fluency data. ORF stands for oral reading fluency. That generally means about how many words a student can read in a certain time frame correctly. And then ENW is a phonics, well, it's a literacy pillar, I would say. It's a foundational skill about being able to decode nonsense words. So it's not a real word, but it is something that is having students practice decoding words that they don't know, because we know that decoding, and of course the science of reading, is showing how important that is to empower students to become really great readers. So they have broken that part in that grade level into two different statistics.
Okay, two different reading skills. All right. So now that was just my curiosity.
It's an important question.
My bigger question is, where will the advertising dollars go? I mean, what budget did they go in?
We are still at the beginning of that discussion. I'll ask Val if she has an initial take, though this is a cold read for her, so.
So my initial thoughts would be that it would just be part of the general fund to support ongoing operations. There's always strategies. Certainly if it's going to help fund purchase a new scoreboard, there's going to be, offset to the cost for that. But my initial take would just be that we would put it in the general fund as a ongoing revenue stream to help operations.
Good question. Any other questions or comments? You have a question? Yes, Julie.
Just thanks for the great report and all the amazing work that you are able to highlight every 2 weeks for us.
It's fun.
Thank you.
There's some good stuff happening.
Thank you. All right, very good. We're on to the consent agenda. We will move to approval of the consent grouping. As a reminder, there are some personnel items in the table file added to the consent grouping. Is there anything anyone would like to pull from the consent grouping for separate consideration? Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent grouping? Moved by Julie, second by Amy. All those in favor of approving the consent grouping, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Right, items for individual action. There are 4 items. First, we have the Child Nutrition Department District Office reorganization. The board is asked to approve the district level Child Nutrition Department Administration reorganization presented at the last board meeting. This will extend the Director of Child Nutrition's contract from 43 to 52 weeks and integrate the Child Nutrition Department Administrative Assistant duties with the District Office Receptionist duties. These recommended changes will be retroactive to July 1, 2022 for the Director of Child Nutrition, on October 3rd, 2022 for the District Office Receptionist. Is there a motion to approve the Child Nutrition Department restructuring as proposed? Moved by Amy, second. Mike Corey. Are there, Dr. Hillman, do you want to make any comments?
I think we reviewed it in detail the last time. I just do want to point out for people just tuning in, this does provide general fund relief of around $36,000 for the district.
Are there any comments or questions from the board members? Okay, we have a motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes. The next item is the board is requested to approve the policy committee's recommended updates to policy 655 on volunteers. Is there a motion to approve the policy committee's recommended updates to policy 655 as presented? Moved by Tom, second. By Amy. Dr. Hillman, do you want to make any comments?
Again, I reviewed it at the last meeting, really just updating some of the language in this policy, so nothing substantial.
Okay. Any comments or questions? All right, seeing none, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, item C, the rental rate for Greenville Park Gymnasium. Director of Community Education, Aaron Bailey, is requesting to increase the rental rate for the Greenville Park Gymnasium to align with the rental rate of the Spring Creek and Bridgewater gymnasiums. The district currently charges $2 less per hour for the Greenville Park Gym, which is a carryover rate dating back to when the Greenville Park Gym was the NCEC gym. As per policy 902, a rental fee schedule, deposit or security bond schedule, and payment procedures shall be presented for review and approval by the school board. I will take a motion and then we can discuss. Is there a motion to approve the request to increase the rental rate to $2 per hour? Okay. And this will align the rental rates. Okay, is there a second? Okay, second by Jeff. Dr. Hellman, do you want to make any comments?
This is something that at our last one-on-one update with Aaron, it was a holdover from when the new Greenville Park Gym went online. We made a lot of different changes, moving everything to the new facility, rebranding the old facility as the NCEC. This was an oversight. The old Greenville Park Gymnasium, the current NCEC gymnasium, was smaller than the other two, so there was a lower rate charged per hour. Obviously, the new Greenville Park Gym is of a similar size to the Bridgewater and Spring Creek, and we just think it's fair to put this on the same rate as those. And so this is really just trying to correct. And frankly, when we moved into the Greenville Park Gymnasium, we didn't have a lot of people using the gym that year. So it was an oversight that we just want to correct at this time.
Good. Okay, Julie, question.
I think this is the absolutely right thing to do, obviously, to align all of our gyms for the same rate. But are there any existing long-term contracts that would honor the rate that they had originally contracted for?
Yeah, so by you approving it,
How they would blend in the new increase. Aaron
will implement this new pricing structure as we move ahead. If there are already existing agreements, anything that would be changed would be made by mutual agreement with that organization. And then, of course, it would be active moving forward.
Thank you.
Good question. Okay, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Finally, we have a resolution. And there's quite a bit of details here that I will go through and then we will make a motion and Anita will facilitate the resolution. This is a resolution establishing combined polling places for multiple precincts and designating hours during which the polling place will remain open for voting for school district elections not held on the day of a statewide election. School districts are required to approve a resolution to combine polling places in the event the school district were to hold a special election. This resolution must be approved by December 31st of each year, whether the school district intends to hold a special election or not. The board must designate the combined polling places they would use in the future calendar year and notify county auditors by sending them a copy of the resolution. Combined polling places must be a location currently designated for use by a county or municipality. The combined polling locations are the same locations that have been unanimously approved by the board since 2020. Is there a motion to approve the resolution establishing combined polling places for multiple precincts and designating hours during which the polling place will remain open for voting for school district elections not held on the day of a statewide election? Okay, moved by Julie. Is there a second? Second by Corey. Okay, Dr. Hillman, do you want to make any comment?
Yeah, simply, so we have been required to have you take this resolution since I think around 2017 when the election law changed. These are the same 4 polling places, combined polling places that you have approved since 2020. Obviously, since in the last few years, we didn't think we were going to use it. But this year it's clear from discussion, it's possible that we could use it. We're taking the required action that we have done, every year since this election law has been in place. We did, with these 4 combined polling places, we do the best that we can to take a look at geography. What are the locations in town that are closest for townships and for other precincts that are voting at a place where they don't normally vote, number one. Number 2, we try to look at how can we balance the number of registered voters at each of these locations. Because of, we've seen more voting in the last couple of years at our last couple of elections. We did have a conference call with Rice County, the chief of Rice County elections in the city of Northfield to review these potential combined polling places. They both indicated that the county and the city would be able to support us. Something I do think is important as just as part of this is that in the past, if we ever did hold a special election that was not in conjunction with a general election, the school district would basically run the election. It's very clear that the voting technology has changed in the last few years that we will, I just don't see a way for us to run the election ourselves. We'd most likely have to have the county and or the city be able to help us. Things like going from, it used to be, you'd have the printouts, right, of all the registered voters at 7 a.m. We could but now all of that is on a poll pad. There's some other updates with some of the newer voting machines and those kinds of things. So we just don't believe we have the human capacity to run something like that. So, which is a reason that we asked these 2 entities, how do these combined polling places look? They're the exact same ones. There's one minor change. Starting in 2023, Webster Township will go from having 2 precincts to 1. That's going to be that's a Rice County change. And so if you see that's really the only change between the resolutions that you've adopted since 2020 and now. But we're required to take this each year. And so I just wanted to give a little bit of additional explanation like we do each year.
Very good. Okay, there's several questions. Okay, Tom?
Go ahead. What are the early voting parameters?
Tom, I don't have, I believe that it follows the same procedures under what the state statute is, but I don't have those specifics as how they relate. If there's anything, I don't have anything for you tonight about how they differ in a special election versus a regular general election, but we can certainly bring that information for you.
Question? Okay, Jeff?
Yeah, this isn't necessarily voting on whether you had 4 up to 20 some on a special election, is it? It's just, this is something different.
So I understand what you're saying is that you're asking, is this a vote officially saying that if we did have a special election that we would have 4 combined polling places?
Well, I mean, I know that, I mean, out of all the polling places, it's something I need to study a little bit more. I mean, if you had a special election, if you're just doing it in the metro, or I mean, our city, I mean, there's like 4, but there's like 25 in the school district. So I mean, if I'm voting, you know, yes to this, am I just voting to just 4 if you ever had a special election?
For the next year. So you're required to take
Okay.
this each year. So we can propose different things each year. You're just required every year. Sometimes, so one of the other requirements is that you're required to have a combined polling place in a location that is an existing polling place for the county and or the city. So you're required to have that. It used to be that you didn't have to do that, right? A lot of schools would do one combined polling place at their middle school, right? That's not something that's allowed anymore. So we are required to give you a proposal of how would we conduct combined polling place elections, which is or combined polling places for a special election. Every district in the state's required to take a resolution like this. And I can't think of many districts that don't do some combined polling places just for the efficiency of the election, because the district does have a cost related to it. And so trying to make sure something else, the last time that we ran a special election in 2017, we couldn't even get enough we had to go outside of the district to get election judges. So it isn't just about it's about the whole mechanics of the election, Jeff. It is about how do we put polling places together in a way that makes sense, that make it feasible, and where we can, run that election. Now, since if we contract out, the election judges probably wouldn't be our problem anymore, but we know that there's a shortage of that.
And this is just for a special election. So it's like, I'm not necessarily, well, anyway.
It is
I'll
only
just- I'm gonna
for,
vote
it is
no.
only for a special election. So this does not impact anything, that's a general election. If a special election is conducted in conjunction with a general election, like we just had in November, you use the general election polling places. This is one that's simply just saying, if we have a special election 2023, these are the combined polling places that we would have. And you're required to take that vote every year, so you could theoretically change them every year.
Good question. Okay, Amy.
I have 2 questions for you. The first is kind of a follow-up on Tom's question. Where does early voting happen? Does it happen at City Hall, or does it have to happen at the district office, or do you know how that would work?
So early voting, term early voting is really new since 2017, the last time that we ran one. But if you use absentee balloting as a proxy, we actually had a couple of different, if I remember correctly, I know for sure we did take absentee ballots in the district office. And I believe, if I remember correctly, that we also, I don't know if Val, if you remember, I think you could also do it at City Hall, if I'm remembering correctly. So you follow the same rules as my understanding right now, and I will of course bring you back additional information. Because that's not part of the combined polling place resolution. That's more about the component of the election that we would have. My understanding is we would follow the same rules as any other election.
Okay. My second question is, with these locations in various churches, do we have to ask them permission?
Yeah, so great question. So they are an established polling place. So we do work with them. They are committed to being a polling location. So we would of course work with those locations to establish that.
But if they say, we're having our garage sale on May 5th, and so we can't have an election that day.
There's a
What
process
happens?
for modifying it up to 90 days. You have to do that 90 days before the election. But we have not had a problem with these locations in the past.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions?
So can you, for clarification, can you recap then what the yes vote and the no vote would be?
Yes, so a yes vote would be for adopting the combined polling places as presented, as the board has unanimously adopted since 2020. Voting no would be voting against that. And so if we didn't pass this particular resolution, we'd have to bring something else back to you, because we're required by law to adopt these before December 31st.
And Matt, did you talk about the cost? Do you know what the cost is?
We do not know what the cost is at this point. Part of it is that things have really changed since 2017. We know what it generally cost in 2017. We have talked with both Rice County both Rice County and the city of Northfield to ask what they would charge us to be able to run any kind of election. We think we need to have an updated dollar figure on that anyway. So we're getting that from them at this time.
Okay, good. Okay, this is a resolution, and so, Anita, if you'll help facilitate that, we do have a motion.
Broniak,
Aye.
Butler,
Aye.
Gurwitz,
Aye.
Gonzalez, George,
Aye.
Pritchard,
Aye.
Cornell,
No.
Okay, motion passes. I have, become aware that I skipped item C, which is committee reports. Did you have any committee reports to share? Okay. Very good. So now we are, on to, I don't have any items of information. And then our future meetings are all at 6 PM here in the district office boardroom. They are Monday, December 12th. That's a regular board meeting. Monday, January 9th, 2023 at, it's an organizational meeting followed immediately by a regular board meeting. And then Monday, January 23rd, it's another regular board meeting.
Can we just point out that at the December 12th meeting, we will be holding our truth and taxation meeting that is now part of the meeting. And so years ago, you had it separate from the meeting, but our truth and taxation meeting will be part of the December 12th meeting, as we've done for some time now.
Okay, very good. That is all the business that we have for tonight. Is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Jeff, second. Second by Amy. Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.